I'm always on the lookout for great storytelling, great vocal skills, great capacity to get ideas across. And in these days, there's so much stuff written in the business arena that's just not all that interesting. I pick it up, I listen to it, or I read it, and I think, what have I learned from that? However, there are a few that are pretty good, and sometimes they come as surprises. One of my favorites, and this is from the position of analyzing what goes wrong. This is such a good book, and it's beautifully presented by Jim Collins, who reads his own text in How the Mighty Fall. And Collins takes on here a very structured sense of what goes right and then goes wrong. Why do companies that have had long track records suddenly find themselves breaking down? Collins needed to analyze this. This is part of his work. And determine what mental configurations, what forms of thinking, and what attitudes and beliefs led to sudden breakdowns in companies that seem to be indestructible. Like you would think there would be permanent features, and suddenly they're either very weak or gone. So I couldn't recommend enough, and I do think that everybody here in this group, this community, should read or listen to, and I actually recommend listening to it because the vocal delivery carries a lot of information. Collins is very impassioned, almost to the point of being ridiculous, but he gets it across, and it's a great example of one having something to say, having something substantive and illuminating and actually generally worth knowing. I think this is stuff that ought to be common knowledge. It's just good, solid insight into the processes that bring about real-world success when you strip away all the baloney and all the wishful thinking and motivational speaking and stuff like that might help, but it's not the juice. But Collins is very good at getting down to the juice. What's really happening with success and what's really happening when success stops happening. The other thing I read, or actually listened to, was Trump. And you think, good God, Donald Trump, who would listen to that stuff? The Donald has got something to say. He's an interesting guy. And my initial response was to be very prejudiced. I thought, I would not listen to this guy in 1,000 years. He is just the antithesis of everything I feel that I ought to be paying attention to. But I thought, okay, look, I'm going to challenge my own limiting beliefs. And one of my limiting beliefs is the Donald's got nothing to say to me. So this is actually read by a guy named Alan Sklar, and he's talking about Donald Trump, but he's also talking about another guy, Bill Zanker, who started something called the Learning Annex. So Sklar reads from the voice and the style and the thinking of Trump, and then the other part of the audio presentation is he really enters into Bill Zanker. And Sklar is a great voice actor. You really feel like something about the way he's speaking and the way he's using his voice is allowing you to get into the groove and kind of be there with Trump. And when he's doing Zanker, you feel like he's really letting you be there with Zanker. So my suggestion is, do listen to audiobooks. Listen to well-read audiobooks. And I'll give you a caveat. For every good, well-read audiobook where all the para-communication, the para-language of voice, tonality, timbre, speech, inflection, all the little mental punctuation is completely aligned with the content is rather uncommon. There's a lot of stuff that I listen to that is there's actually an incongruity that weakens the communication. But I would suggest for something which has got a great deal of congruity between the medium and the message, do listen to this either by download or get the CDs. And do also listen to How the Mighty Fall by Jim Collins. Both have a lot to say. You may find yourself disagreeing with them on various points, or it's just not what you're about. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot to be learned from both of them. And what we're about here is learning. So get into one of your learning trances, carve out a little time, say before you're going to go to bed or something, listen to this stuff, let it sink in, test it. How do you think of it? How does this work for you? How does the voice work? Try on both the personas and the characters and the information. Just let it kind of work its way through your mind. and see what the outcome is. I think you'll have some interesting learnings from that. Okay, that's it for today's ToadCam Transmissions. Signing off.